Memphis, Tennessee, August 1974. The International Hotel was packed with 2,500 screaming fans. Elvis Presley was in the middle of Suspicious Minds when suddenly his voice cracked. The music stopped. The king of rock and roll stood frozen, staring into the crowd. Security guards rushed toward the stage, hands on their radios, scanning for threats. But what Elvis saw wasn't a danger. It was something that would bring the legendary performer to tears and change one family's life forever. What happened next became one of the most talked about moments in music history, yet somehow it remained hidden from the public for decades. Elvis wasn't supposed to perform that night. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, had advised against it. The singer had been battling exhaustion, and his personal physician, Dr. Nick, had expressed concerns about his health. But Elvis insisted. "The fans paid to see me," he'd said firmly in his dressing room just an hour before showtime. "I won't let them down." The atmosphere backstage was tense. Band members noticed Elvis seemed distracted, distant even. Charlie Hodge, his longtime friend and rhythm guitarist, tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but Elvis barely responded. He sat in front of his mirror, studying his reflection with an intensity that made everyone uncomfortable. Something was weighing on him, though no one dared ask what. When the lights dimmed and the opening chords began, Elvis transformed. The moment he stepped onto that stage, he became the performer the world knew and loved. His white jumpsuit, adorned with intricate designs and a cape that caught the stage lights, shimmered as he moved. The crowd erupted. Women screamed, men cheered, and cameras flashed like lightning across a dark sky. He opened with C.C. Ryder, his voice powerful and commanding. The audience was mesmerized, singing along to every word. Elvis moved across the stage with the charisma that had made him a legend, pointing to fans, winking, throwing scarves into the eager crowd. For those first 20 minutes, everything seemed perfect. Security, led by Red West, Elvis's old friend and bodyguard, maintained their positions throughout the venue. They'd worked dozens of these shows and knew the routine by heart. Watch the crowd, look for anyone trying to rush the stage, keep the aisles clear. It was supposed to be another successful night, but then came Suspicious Minds, Elvis's signature song, the one that had brought him back to the top of the charts in 1969. As he belted out the opening lyrics, something caught his eye. Row 12, seat 17. A small figure in a faded blue dress, holding a handmade sign. Elvis's voice faltered. He squinted against the stage lights, trying to see more clearly. Then, without warning, he stopped singing entirely. The band, confused, gradually stopped playing. A crowd fell silent, uncertain what was happening. Was this part of the show? Was Elvis okay? Security immediately went on high alert, speaking rapidly into their radios, preparing for any scenario. But Elvis wasn't looking at a threat. His hand was over his mouth, and in the sudden quiet of that massive venue, everyone could see tears beginning to stream down his face. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she was 9 years old. She sat between her mother, Linda, and her older brother, Tommy, clutching a sign she'd made from cardboard and markers. The sign read, "Elvis, my daddy loved you. He's watching from heaven." Sarah's father, James Mitchell, had died 3 months earlier in a car accident. He'd been a mechanic in a small town outside Memphis, a hard-working man who'd grown up listening to Elvis on the radio. James had saved for 2 years to buy tickets to this concert front row seats, no less. He'd planned to surprise his family, to give them a night they'd never forget, but James never made it to the show. On a rainy Tuesday in May, an 18-wheeler jackknifed on the highway, and James Mitchell's life ended in an instant. He was 41 years old. He left behind a devastated wife, 2 heartbroken children, and 3 tickets to see Elvis Presley that he'd hidden in his workshop. Linda found the tickets a week after the funeral, tucked inside James's toolbox with a note. To my family, let's make memories together. Love always, James. Linda broke down crying, holding those tickets like they were made of gold. Tommy, at 14, tried to be strong for his mother, but even he couldn't hold back tears. For weeks, Linda couldn't decide what to do. The thought of going to that concert without James seemed impossible. How could they enjoy something he'd worked so hard to give them? How could they smile and sing when their hearts were shattered? But the date approached, and Sarah began asking questions. Are we still going to see Elvis, Mama? Daddy would want us to go, wouldn't he? Tommy was the one who convinced her. Dad saved for this. He wanted us to have this experience. We should go for him. So Linda made a decision. They would attend the concert. They would honor James's memory by doing what he'd wanted most. To share his love of Elvis with his children. Sarah had insisted on making the sign. With her mother's help, she'd carefully written out each word, decorating it with stars and hearts. Daddy needs to know Elvis got his message, she'd explained with the simple logic of a child. Linda didn't have the heart to explain that Elvis probably wouldn't even see it. But now, as Elvis Presley stood frozen on stage, staring directly at their row, Linda realized something extraordinary was happening. Sarah stood up slowly, holding her sign higher. Elvis pointed directly at her, then at the sign. He said something to the band, then walked to the edge of the stage. The entire venue held its breath. Security guards looked at each other, uncertain whether to intervene. Red West started moving toward the stage, but Elvis held up a hand, stopping him. The king of rock and roll wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, and did something no one expected. He sat down on the edge of the stage, his legs dangling over the side, and gestured for Sarah to come closer. Linda's hands shook as she helped Sarah navigate past the other audience members. Tommy followed, protective of his little sister. When they reached the front, Elvis extended his hand to Sarah. The little girl, suddenly shy, hesitated before taking it. What's your name, honey? Elvis asked, his voice amplified by the microphone, but gentle, intimate. Sarah, she whispered. Sarah Mitchell? And your daddy? He loved music? Sarah nodded, tears now streaming down her own face. He loved you most of all. He used to sing, "Can't Help Falling in Love," to my mama every morning. Elvis's eyes welled up again. He looked at Linda and Tommy, then back at Sarah. The connection between them was palpable, electric. Everyone in that venue felt this wasn't a performance anymore. This was something real, something human, something that transcended the barrier between superstar and fan. What was your daddy's name? Elvis asked softly. James Mitchell. He was the best daddy in the whole world. Sarah's voice cracked, but she kept talking, the words tumbling out like she'd been waiting to say them. He worked really hard. He fixed cars. He always sang your songs while he worked. Tommy used to help him, and Daddy would sing so loud. And we'd laugh because he didn't sound like you at all. But we loved it anyway. A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the crowd, but it was sympathetic, warm. People were crying now, moved by this unexpected moment of raw emotion. Elvis nodded, understanding more than words could express. Your daddy sounds like he was a real good man. A real good man. He paused, composing himself. You know what? I think your daddy is watching right now. I really do. And I think he'd want me to sing something special, just for him, and for you beautiful folks. He stood up, helping Sarah back to her mother, but he didn't return to center stage. Instead, he gestured for his band. Boys, let's do Can't Help Falling in Love, and let's do it right. What happened next would be talked about for years. Elvis sang that song with more emotion than anyone had ever heard from him. His voice, usually powerful and commanding, became tender and vulnerable. He sang directly to Sarah, to Linda, to Tommy, to the memory of James Mitchell. The band played softly, knowing this moment required delicacy throughout the venue. People held each other. Couples embraced. Parents hugged their children. Complete strangers shared tissues and held hands. Even the hardened security guards found themselves wiping their eyes. Red West, who'd known Elvis since high school, later said it was the most powerful moment he'd ever witnessed in all his years with the singer. When the song ended, the silence was profound. Then, slowly, the audience began to applaud. Not the wild, screaming applause of before, but something deeper, a standing ovation of respect, of shared humanity, of collective emotion. Elvis took off one of his signature scarves, the ones he usually threw to fans, casually throughout the show. But this time, he folded it carefully, walked back to the edge of the stage, and handed it directly to Sarah. "You keep this safe," he told her. "And you remember that your daddy's love is all around you, all the time. Love like that doesn't die. It lives in here." He placed his hand over his heart, but Elvis wasn't done. He pulled Red West aside and whispered something urgently. Red nodded and disappeared backstage. When he returned moments later, he was carrying something, an acoustic guitar, the one Elvis used for private sessions. "This guitar," Elvis announced to the crowd, "has been with me through some of my best memories. It's been in recording studios, in my home, in places most people never see. And now I want it to go to a home where it'll be loved, where it'll remind a family that music connects us all." He handed it to Tommy. "You take care of your mama and your sister, you hear? And you keep your daddy's memory alive." Tommy, trying so hard to be the man of the family, finally broke down. He hugged the guitar to his chest and sobbed. Elvis embraced him, and the image of the king of rock and roll holding a grieving teenage boy became one of the most iconic moments in music history, even though most people didn't see it until years later. After the concert, Elvis did something else unprecedented. He invited the Mitchell family backstage. While the crew broke down equipment and other guests filtered out, Elvis sat with Linda, Sarah, and Tommy in his private dressing room for over an hour. They talked about James, about life, about loss and love, and the importance of family. Elvis shared his own stories of loss, his mother, Gladys, who had died when he was just 23, and how that grief had shaped him. "The pain never completely goes away," he told them honestly, "but it changes. It becomes part of your strength, part of what makes you who you are." He gave them his private phone number, written on a piece of International Hotel stationery. "If you ever need anything, you call. I mean that." And he did mean it. Over the next 3 years, until his own death in 1977, Elvis stayed in touch with the Mitchell family. He sent birthday cards to Sarah and Tommy. He called on holidays. When Tommy graduated high school, Elvis sent a congratulatory telegram and a generous check for college. The guitar Elvis gave Tommy that night became a family treasure. Tommy taught himself to play on it, and eventually he taught Sarah too. Years later, Tommy would form a band and play local venues around Memphis, always telling the story of how Elvis Presley had changed his family's life in a single night. But the impact extended far beyond the Mitchell family. The people who were in the audience that night went home changed. They called their loved ones. They hugged their families tighter. They realized that life was fragile and precious. That connection mattered more than fame or fortune. Some audience members had secretly recorded audio of the concert on primitive devices, cassette recorders smuggled in against venue rules. The quality was poor, but the emotion was unmistakable. These recordings circulated among hardcore Elvis fans for years, becoming almost mythical. People spoke of the night Elvis cried, but details were fuzzy. Stories conflicted. It wasn't until 1995, nearly 20 years after Elvis's death, that the full story came to light. Sarah Mitchell, now a mother herself, was interviewed for a documentary about Elvis's most meaningful performances. She brought the scarf, the sign she'd made as a child, and photographs from that night. She shared the letters Elvis had sent, the phone conversations they'd had. The documentary sparked renewed interest in Elvis's humanity, not just his celebrity. People began sharing their own stories of times when Elvis had shown kindness, generosity, or compassion. The image of Elvis as merely an entertainer evolved into something more complex and beautiful, a reminder that even legends are human, capable of deep emotion and genuine connection. Tommy Mitchell, who had become a music teacher, started a scholarship fund in his father's name, supported initially by Elvis's estate after Sarah reached out to them. The scholarship helped children who'd lost parents pursue music education. Dad would have loved that, Tommy said at the fund's launch. Music healing pain, bringing people together, that's what he believed in. The venue where it all happened, the International Hotel, eventually became the Las Vegas Hilton, and later the Westgate. But employees and longtime fans always remembered it as the place where Elvis stopped a show for a little girl holding a sign. Tours would point out row 12, seat 17, and guides would tell the story with reverence. The night Elvis Presley halted his show for Sarah Mitchell reminds us that true greatness isn't measured in record sales or sold-out venues. It's measured in moments of authentic human connection. In a world that often feels divided and disconnected, we need more reminders that compassion, empathy, and love can break through any barrier. What would you have done in Elvis's position? Have you ever witnessed a moment that restored your faith in humanity? Share your stories in the comments below. Let's keep the spirit of connection alive. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories that celebrate the best of human nature. What was your most powerful concert experience? Tell us below.